All right, friends, good to see you tonight. We're going to go ahead and begin our time together tonight as we hear from our guests. But let me open us up with a word of prayer, and then I'll hand it over to Pastor John. Father, thank you for a chance to hear from friends tonight. Lord, as we all are passionate about the cause of life and Father, supportive of those who serve those who are in a real vulnerable state. Lord, we pray for this ministry and lift it up to you. These individuals who represent this ministry tonight, Lord, we pray for them as well. Father, as we prepare for our week ahead, Lord, would your Spirit just fill us and guide us as we not only make decisions from day to day, but Lord, respond to issues that come up at work and our families and just in life. And in all of those situations, in every circumstance, Lord, may we honor you, both in word and deed. Lord, may you be glorified in our time together tonight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. For those of you who are gathered tonight, I think we might have some more come in before things really get ramped up. You know, we were supposed to make tonight happen about a month ago, but we had some dicey weather back in January, and so we called off. I didn't want to have just a tiny amount of folks show up for tonight because I'm really excited about hearing from a couple from Clarity Women's Healthcare, ministry that our church has financially supported for a number of years now. A ministry, though, that I personally am not all that educated about, so I'm looking forward to this as much as anybody. And we have Cassie Walden and Tony Williams with us. Cassie serves as the executive director of Clarity Women's Healthcare, and Tony's the board president right now. He said he just started his second term, so fourth year as board president. We also have Tammy Allgaier. She's on the board for Clarity, and so is Doug Doris. And so I told him, hey, when you're done, if you guys need to have just a little ad hoc board meeting, go for it. So we'll provide the space. But I do look forward to hearing you guys tonight. I just wanted to introduce you. So you come. They're going to share, and then there's going to be some Q&A opportunity at the end. So just make some mental notes, and if there are things you're curious about as the night unfolds, you'll definitely have the opportunity to ask of these two before the night's over. So you guys come, and then once they're finished, Pastor Danny will close our night out.
All right. Well, Pastor Howard, thank you, first of all, for having us here. It's awesome, Cassie and I and the board. We've been talking a lot about how it's so important that we get the word out here about what's going on with abortion and what's going on with the pro-life movement. So my name's Tony Williams. I'm not all that important in this whole thing, but I will tell you a quick story to start out with about how God seems to keep doing things in Southern Illinois. This morning, I'm sitting in church, and I was thinking about this. This is only the second or third time we've kind of given a presentation. I've given a couple others about what it means to be pro-life and sort of talking about what Clarity does. And I'm having one of those moments of doubt. Like, am I really the right guy to be doing this? Why am I here? Why am I going to some church and giving a speech full of lovely people, but who am I? And I kind of had my head down like, what is this? Am I really? And in that moment, a baby immediately behind me started crying out of nowhere. It was amazing. And the lightning went through my bones, and I almost wept, kind of did. But it was a reminder that the sound of a baby crying is so amazing. And the sound of my own boys cried when they were born. So it took me back immediately to all that. And it got me, I think God sent me that. And I hope that tonight that you'll hear something that clicks with you. I don't know, everybody here might be in a different place about the pro-life movement or abortion. Odds are that somebody in here maybe has had an abortion or had someone encouraged an abortion. And of course, if you're sitting in this church, I hope you all know, of course, there is forgiveness in Christ. That is covered. That is absolutely nothing that I am here to condemn anyone for here tonight. The reason I'm here, as you may know, or hopefully have recognized, I'm not a woman. Why is this guy talking about abortion? Isn't abortion a women's issue? Aren't men supposed to stay out of this? Well, statistically in the U.S., half the people who were aborted would have been men. So, yes, men, you have a say in this, first and foremost. That's for my men. What about Christians? Well, we're going to talk about that. So what I'm going to do real quick is give some statistical information that you may or may not have ever heard. Some of you guys probably know this better than I do. After that, I'm going to talk about why we should be pro-life, especially as Christians, and then how to get involved. And I'm going to introduce Cassie, who's the real star of the show. So as far as stats go, just for a little background, I better set my watch because I talk too much. So, Doug, you're going to give me the timer at like the board meetings, right? So when we talk about stats, I want you to realize 2 years ago, there were no abortion facilities in essentially southern Illinois outside of the Metro East area. Obviously, Carbondale had 0. The hospital in Carbondale quit doing abortions back in the 80s because of public pressure, actually, believe it or not. But they used to do them, and they no longer do those now, thankfully. However, some other folks have moved in the last year. For a long time, you might have heard of Roe versus Wade in 1973. That allowed abortion, actually required abortion to be legal in all 50 states. That was basically a Supreme Court decision. A lot of that stuff they just conjured up. But nonetheless, that was the law of the land for almost 50 years. A decision called Dobbs happened, which sent the decision back to the states last year. And now every state can decide whether or not abortion should be legal, and if so, how legal should it be? When should it start to be illegal? Illinois is a very pro-choice state, quite simply. And thankfully, there's a lot of states around us and below us who are not. They're very pro-life. So what has happened in the very, very recent past is that states like Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, all the way down south to Texas, south and east of us, have all basically adopted or already had pro-life laws ready to go. So many of these states have essentially completely outlawed abortion, thank God. And I'm confident tens of thousands of babies have been spared an abortion. However, Illinois has tried to help overcome that obstacle by essentially making Carbondale ground zero. We in Carbondale has become a hub. We now have 3 abortion clinics, in case you hadn't heard. The first one was Choices, came in maybe 18 months ago. The Alamo Clinic out on the west side came in about a year ago. And as of about a month and a half ago, Planned Parenthood is now in operation on the west side of Carbondale. So we've gone from 0 to 3. In the United States, what it looks like is basically the southern states are primarily have pro-life legislation that disallows any abortions. So now Carbondale, Illinois, and Las Cruces, New Mexico are the 2 abortion hubs for the South. So all the abortions that formerly occurred in Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, on down the line, Oklahoma, and all those, basically are now moved to these 2 cities in these two states. So that's the fight that Southern Illinois and Carbondale. That's why we're here. Statistically, so we're going to just talk about statistics. Well, what is abortion? Okay, so we have these we have these abortion facilities now in Southern Illinois. What's that really mean? What is abortion? Well, let's get our definition straight. Abortion is the intentional taking of a human life in the womb. We'll just settle on that. So Planned Parenthood, 2020, 2021 numbers. I just want to give you a little taste of the statistics, because this is not something you're going to see on the nightly news. This is just for Planned Parenthood. This isn't for all the other abortion clinics. Just in 2020 and 2021, in a 1 year, they do their cycle a little differently, 383,460 abortions that just Planned Parenthood did. And a lot of people will say Planned Parenthood, but they do all these other services. And well, they do other things too. 96% of their business is abortion, 96%. They refer out a lot of things to other places. They're not necessarily paying for anything. They're saying, oh, if you want this or that service, you can go over here and they'll do it for you and you can pay them. Okay, but what are they really providing then? Well, if 96% of their pregnancy services are abortion, 2.2 are for miscarriage care. That's 2.2%. 0.7% is for, 0.5% is for an adoption referral. So 0.5, half of a percentage, is to help people have adoptions, to help adopt their children out. And I have a feeling it's probably more rare than that. Interestingly, I'll get into that here in a second. But for every 198 abortions, they did 1 adoption, essentially. So I want to talk about, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I know I'm limited on time. It's not about the money, right? It's not about abortion and Planned Parenthood. However, it might be about the money considering they bring in $1.7 billion in annual income. They have $2.1 billion in net assets. And then interestingly, those assets probably had a vast increase when about a year and a half ago when Dobbs happened, they closed down 43 facilities in the South. So if Planned Parenthood is not just about abortion, when the act of abortion was outlawed in those states, why did they just suddenly close down 43 abortion facilities? Well, it's because abortion is their thing. That's what they do. So don't be mistaken about this. The idea is out there that these facilities exist to help women, okay? Let's face it, we have to look at the numbers and see that their biggest industry is abortion by far. So what about how many abortions are there really, though? If Planned Parenthood did about 380 in a year, 380,000 in a year, totally in Illinois, there are about 40,000 abortions per year. And I was stunned when I looked at this. And this information, if you ever want this, I'd be happy to share it with you. But it's from, actually, Guttmacher Institute is the research arm of Planned Parenthood. So they provide a lot of these statistics. Well, 40,000 babies are aborted in Illinois. What's that look like? Well, that's 20% of our population. So 20% of our population of babies that would be born every year, 1 in 5 is aborted. 1 in 5 babies born that would have been born in Illinois are aborted. Worldwide, how many abortions are there? It's kind of stunning when I first looked at this, and you try to digest these numbers, and we just really can't do it very well. So in the United States, since Roe versus Wade happened in 1973, there are varying numbers, but the very minimal number of abortions is 44 million abortions in the United States. But it's most likely more likely around 60 million or higher. So imagine 60 million Americans, that's just in America since 1973 that we have aborted. So now you know what it kind of looks like numbers-wise. What about the world? We're actually talking about, let's see here. Nope, that's next page, sorry. Oh, and before I forget, of those abortions, so Planned Parenthood is obviously the #1 provider of those abortions in the United States. In 2021, which was obviously, we were heating up for Dobbs, we knew there was a lot of advancing in donations and things like that, support for Planned Parenthood. In 2021, they had about $579.3 million in donations. That's up 14%. And also, Planned Parenthood enjoyed $633.4 million in taxpayer funding. So, you know what? We all have a say in this. If nothing else, we're taxpayers. So just please remember that. In terms of cause of death too, I thought this was interesting, and I like stats. Forgive me. We talk about causes of death. What's killing Americans? Well, we look at this. Some of the big things. Cancer, 605,213 people in a year. This is from WeCount from 2021. Heart disease, 695,547 people died. 224,935 accidents. That's like unintentional car crashes, things like that. Abortion was around 830,000. So, I'm sorry, 974,000 that year. 974,000 abortions. So abortion is the leading cause of death, if we're going to count those as deaths. And that's the key. That's what we're here to decide. Is that really a death? Is that really a person? And all those things I want to get to, I promise. But that's what we need to decide, especially us as Christians. So statistically, too, it's important to realize abortion is not settled among the church. And I say that big C. A large portion of the women who have abortions identify themselves as Christians, both evangelical and Catholic, surprisingly. To me, it was surprising. But it's not surprising because we as the church haven't talked about this. We haven't really discussed this in the depth that we should. And that's why I'm so happy that you guys invited us here tonight to actually get this out here and start talking about this and make the church aware of this. Only 25% of the population in the United States, statistically, and this is from Pew Research, believes abortion should be allowed in all cases. If you watch the news, you probably believe that it's 99%, and only that 1% crazy person, people over here on the fringes believe that abortion should always be outlawed. No, it's 25%. And only a small portion believe it should be ultimately illegal in all cases, about 13%. But we want to talk about that, but we'll get there. Why do women have abortions? That's always a touchy subject. Again, if you watch the news, you would assume that 98% of them are rape or incest or something to that effect. Statistically, and again, this is from Guttmacher. These are not pro-life people, to say the least. Rape and incest, that when a woman goes to have an abortion, they report the following as the reasons for their abortion. Rape and incest, 0.3%. So not even 1%, not even 0.5% report that as the reason. Now, I recognize there could be variables here, but certainly if it's not 50% or even 20% or 5%, it's less than 0.5%. Risk to the woman's life or major bodily function, 0.2%. 0.2%. So not even as much as rape or incest. Very, very small percentage-wise. Other physical health concerns, 2.5%. Abnormality to the unborn baby, 1.3%. That's what they report. 1.3% of abortions are for that reason. And finally, elective or unspecified reasons, 95.7%. So we have to recognize, a lot of people want to argue from the fringes, from the very uncommon occurrence. They want to argue abortion should always be legal because this happens this percentage of the time. When in fact, that's just a very rare thing. And we can talk about that stuff, but I always tell people, hey, if you want to just make abortion legal and only make it illegal in that, let's start there. I'm happy, but we'll get to how we can talk about that. In the U.S., in the world right now, there's an abortion every 30 seconds on average. So every 30 seconds. So how about this? Why be pro-life? How did I come to be pro-life? I actually read, which my friends from high school would be surprised by, but when I became a Christian, for several years after I became a Christian, truly became a Christian, the thought never settled. I didn't have to think about it like most of us. We never had to wonder, is it right? Does it happen? Some people it happens to, and they have to face this moral dilemma of, should I have an abortion, or should I encourage an abortion, or should I pay for an abortion? But how can we as Christians look at this question of should we be pro-life? A lot of people like to, what about this Bible verse or that Bible verse about two guys fighting and a baby that's not heard and they've got to pay money? I think that the number one verse that we can look at, and I'll tell you why here in a minute, is it's kind of an odd verse, Exodus 20, verse 13, you shall not murder. That is the Bible verse that we can simply look to, okay? Because that's the question we have to ask. As Christians especially, I think as a country and as a world we have to ask that question, but especially we as Christians, we have to ask the question, is it murder to have an abortion? Genesis 9:6 says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. That idea of man being made in God's image is extremely important to this whole exercise of Christianity. We are supposed to be stewards. We are supposed to be the caretakers for what God has created. And that includes the other images, the other image bearers. Another question, who is our neighbor? That's a really good question. You guys remember the story of the Samaritan. Jesus asked him, who is his neighbor? Are the unborn our neighbors? Are the unborn people? And that's where I want to get us tonight. Well, we think back to biblical history, the Canaanites. You guys are probably familiar with the story of the Israelites coming in and destroying and getting the Canaanites out of Canaan. Well, why was that going on? Well, the Canaanites, one of the very wicked practices that the Bible always tends to mention is the idea of Moloch and the sacrifice of their babies. They would have these huge metal idols that would be set up. They would have a fire inside this metal idol, and then in order to get good crops, in order to get what people wanted to give to this god, they would set their babies on the hands of this iron statue, and they would literally sizzle to death. And that is the wicked practice that God talks about, why they're judged, and Israel came in to judge them. And even when Israel falls into that same kind of sin, the Israelites get judged, as you may recall. They get banished, they get taken out, they get overrun. So it seems to me that in any Bible reading, God cares about our children. I'm going to skip over a few more things here. So how do we make the argument? Simply, as Christians, if you've never thought through this, and I hadn't until I read a couple of good books. Scott Klusendorf has a book that it's called The Case for Life. It's very simple, guys. I think we can agree it's all wrong to kill innocent human beings. Abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, abortion is wrong. That's real easy to say, but there's a lot of stuff that we have to take out of that. And I encourage you guys, don't just hear me talk about this. Go look for yourself, go read for yourself. But it's as simple as that. We can make that argument as Christians, as human beings. We can simply say it's wrong to take innocent lives. The unborn are innocent lives, therefore it's wrong to take their lives. And I know there's a lot of emotion wrapped up with this, and I know that's how our culture deals with everything is emotion now, but we have to fight back with logic. God is about logic. God is about truth, and we have to be too. So there's a handy thing I want to share with you if you've never heard it before. Scott Klusendorf, again, from The Case for Life. It's called the SLED method, SLED. And it's a pretty simple way when you think about it, and it's going to help you with every argument you might get in. And I know some of you probably don't have your minds made up about abortion, and that's quite okay. But even for you, if you disagree with me, that's fine. But think about these things just for a minute. Try to walk this out all the way to its logical conclusion. The SLED acronym means size, level of development, environment, or degree of dependence. Size. Can we kill any human beings based on how big they are? Well, a human embryo is really, really small. Is it still a human, though? Obviously, we all know from science, believe it or not, that a human being is a human being with its own unique DNA from both sets of parents, essentially after the moment of conception. You know, we're talking about weeks when this thing has a beating heart. All those things that represent a human being are there, or they're developing. All of the genetic things that this human embryo needs to develop into a person like me standing in front of you is already there in the womb. So is it a unique human being? Science says yeah. So even though it's small, can we kill it? Well, we don't kill short people. You know, we don't systematically go around killing people just because of their size. Thank God. Level of development. What separates a baby that might be 4 weeks premature from a baby who's 4 weeks after being born? And I'm going to get into a couple of these arguments, but remember, level of development. At 20 years old, and I've been a police officer for over 20 years, and I can tell you I've dealt with a lot of 20-year-olds. Their frontal cortexes are not fully developed. A 20-year-old is not a fully developed human being, okay? So I think that it's safe to say that just like we would never take a baby after it's been born and say, well, because it's not reached its full development, because it hasn't done whatever, pick a level of development that babies go through, we would never execute it because it hadn't reached that. There is nothing that I can find anywhere that's written, oh, before this point, it's not a human being, and after this point, it is. Environment, are we allowed to kill people just because of where they are located? There's a lot of arguments that people tend to make about, well, you know, this is, you know, I get the my body, my choice thing, but the problem is it's not just your body we're talking about. There's actually now two bodies involved, like it or not. I know there are a lot of unwanted pregnancies. That's a whole topic, a whole part of this. It's an important thing to talk about for us as Christians, but we can't just give up the fight and act like there's not two human beings involved in this calculus. Degree of dependence. Again, just because it's reliant on the mother to survive, have you ever met a 5-year-old that can survive without its parents? And we don't kill them. I mean, my boys are 7 and 8 now, 8 and 9, and they need us. They tell me that all the time, not in a polite way either. So, so the common arguments you hear, it's not a human, it's not a person. Well, let's talk about where that argument has gotten us in the past. How about slavery? How about the Darwinian materialistic viewpoint that is just our culture is soaked in that says, you know, it's not really a human being, or it's a lesser human being. How about, you know, that was the big thing that people kept pushing forward with slavery, saying it's not a fully developed human being. It's a lesser human being. Therefore, we can do whatever we want. We can enslave it. Fast forward to the 1930s and 40s, Nazism. The Jews aren't real people. And what do they call them? They called them rats. They called them all kinds of bad things to dehumanize them. And that is all that the pro-choice industry and culture has done. They've said they're not allowed to even, I think, call them fetuses now. It's, they call them all kinds of different things that doesn't sound anything like a baby, because I think fetus means baby in Latin, by the way. So they don't even like to call it that. They call it product of conception or something like that. So we don't want to give it any affiliation with actually being human. What about, though, and this is an emotional one, can't afford it. I can't afford to have a kid right now. Okay, first of all, clarity. We'll get there. But also, can we kill anyone because they're poor? Can we just say, you know what, kid, I know you're 2 and you're hungry, so we're just going to have to execute you? Of course not. We go and we take that child. We get that child help. We do what we can to help that child get what it needs. How about men get no say? Again, half of the aborted would have been men. So that is an out that men have been using for far too long. Gentlemen, we have to get ourselves involved. And we have to do so in a loving way, in a way that's not judgment, in a way that shows what we're supposed to be doing by God's design, which is leading and pointing out the truth in a loving way that you would sacrifice yourself for that woman for, but at the same time telling the truth and not giving in to the lie of the enemy. This isn't our problem. This is not really a human being. It's none of my business. I don't have the right parts to be in this, all those other silly things that men have given themselves as an out. We have to stop. If you don't want an abortion, don't have one. They said the exact same line about slavery. If you don't like slavery, don't have one. There's all kinds of other things they've used this exact same line of thinking for. It's horrible logic. Okay? How about we shouldn't legislate morality? Can anyone give me, except for Doug, with the exception of Doug, can anyone think of a law that doesn't legislate morality? I tried to do this with my boys today. Think of any laws that exist that don't legislate morality. Think of the dumbest law. There's a law in Lexington, Kentucky that you can't put an ice cream cone in your back pocket and walk through town. And the reason is, and again, my boys are like, how is that a moral law? Well, because back when horse thievery in Lexington was a big deal, the thieves would put an ice cream cone in their back pocket, and the ice cream cone would drip all the way out of town. The horses would follow them. They're out of town. They just take the horse. It's no longer horse thievery. Every law has a basis in morality, of course. And here's the thing. People who have legislated pro-choice legislation, they are legislating morality. They're telling us abortion is right, abortion is good, abortion is great. You should have one. Everybody should have one. They're legislating that with the law. We as Christians have to be smart about how we're going to respond to this. How about overcrowding? 50% of the world's population lives on 1% of the land. 50%. I guess the rest of us just have bigger yards or something. But according to Worldmeter, 50% of the world lives on 1% of the land. And also China tried this. You might be familiar with the one-child policy in China. It started in the 80s. Well, you probably aren't familiar with the idea that they completely stopped that in 2016 because it was a complete unmitigated disaster. Their population does not have enough young people to take care of its old people now. And so what's happening is they actually are building robots that will help take care of people when they are elderly, because there won't be enough people to take care of them. And I'm like, who's going to take care of the robots? But the fact of the matter is it failed miserably, and they're encouraging people in China to have at least 2 children, but please have 3. They're redesigning cars. It is an entire cultural shift because they recognize we don't have a future. They're going to go from over 1 billion people right now to some estimates in 40 years. They're going to have only between 400 and 500,000 people in China. I mean, 500 million. They were over 1 billion. They look to be almost half of that because they don't recognize what's going to happen with our population as we keep aborting. And they were aborting in far, far more ahead of us, where we're at 20% of our population. They were much higher. But it doesn't matter. We still have the same trajectory if we don't change. What about rape and incest? That's a hard one. Until you think it out a little bit. And this is not to be unemotional about those who have been sexually assaulted. Listen, I worked a ton of these cases, still continue to be involved in those kind of cases. It's a horrible, horrible thing. But some recent cases even have reminded me, what did the child do to deserve the death penalty? is that child going to turn into a mature man or woman? And do we compound the trauma of something horrible that's happened to this woman by encouraging to do something that is very possibly going to cause them even more trauma, to think about, now I have to deal with this, rather than, you know what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good, and we'll make something out of this. And if you've never met a human being who was the product of rape or incest, I bet you probably have. You just didn't know it, first of all. But second of all, there's some amazing people. So these are real human beings, and we have to start seeing that. So how to get involved? You know, I think the number one thing that God has shown me in these last several years of trying to get involved and trying to encourage other people in this is talk. Just have the tough conversations with the people that are around you. Have the tough conversations, because listen, in my family, I have lots of pro-choice people who despise the fact that I'm pro-life, but I don't mind talking about it, and I'm happy to have that conversation, even though it can get ugly. There's ways to tactfully communicate these ideas if we just use logic. So many of the folks in our society now, they just want to use emotion. They just want to argue from those very, very small percentages. Well, let's talk about the big picture stuff and not let ourselves get drawn into the weeds of those arguments. And even when we have to be in the weeds, hey, what is it? That's the number one question we have to ask people. Is it, you can win almost any argument, and in my experience, any argument. What is it? Is it innocent? Is it a human being? If those two answers are yes, then the answer is we shouldn't kill it then. Yes, we have to do stuff like Clarity and other things that our society is doing to try to help these mothers out, of course. But guys, we live in the wealthiest nation in the world. Our poor people are vastly wealthier than most of the people in the world. We will find a way, especially we as Christians. The Christians in Rome, when Christianity was a new thing, when it wasn't even called Christianity yet, the people were throwing their children into the sewers and into the streets because they just didn't want them. They didn't even sacrifice them to God. They just said, I don't want it. And the Christians would go around and pick them up, and they would adopt them, and they would take them in. And ultimately, that's what has happened to all of us as Christians. We've been adopted. We were orphans. We weren't wanted. We wanted whatever we wanted, but not God. But God died on a cross for all of us, and we as Christians have to accept the obligation that Christ gives us to love everyone, including the unborn. I would encourage you, there's a website called abort73.com. It's very good. It talks about a lot of these statistic things. There's prolifetraining.com at Life Training Institute. There's a book called The Case for Life by Scott Klusendorf I mentioned. If you want any of this stuff, just I'll make sure I get some resources to your pastor. And then a book called Tactics by Greg Kokel. It's a great book to learn about how to engage people civilly and lovingly in a Christ-like way on really, really hard topics. Things like ask the person a question, make them clarify their position. And most of the time, you can just have a conversation with someone, and in only asking them questions, never making a statement, you can get someone to turn their entire perspective around. What do you mean by a child? Okay, is it a child when it's, there are so many ways that you can just simply ask questions all day long and let them change their own mind. We're not going to beat people over the head with this topic. We have to love people enough to show them the truth and let them come to that conclusion. So we have to get the head knowledge, right? And we have to have the heart too. But laws, we have to vote. We have to be involved in politics so many times in Christianity right now. And I understand we're so tempted to close ranks and say, you know what, we're just going to be in here. You're going to see me worshiping every Sunday, and that's it. I'll be here with my people till Jesus comes back, and I can't wait. However, there's still a world out there that we're supposed to be active in. We are supposed to be out there. Even if it just means talking to that person, that family member, that friend, and having that conversation to try to change a heart, just like you would to try to evangelize. This is the same tactic. This is about love. This is about truth. And crisis pregnancy centers. Right now, that is huge piece of this puzzle, because so many women are under so much pressure. But there are lots of resources if they're knowledgeable about it. And Clarity is definitely under the gun right now. We have gone from 0 to 3 abortion clinics in a very short matter of time. There are women from all over the South that come here for abortions every day but Sunday. We need more resources. We need help. We're actually looking at a building project to expand. We need a stenographer, which sounds like we may be hopefully on our way to getting another one. So excited to hear about that. But we just have to be activated to get involved in this. And yes, it is going to be a fight, but I would remind you of slavery, of the United States in about, 1850s, 60s. Who was it that got around to pushing things to end slavery, which now we can all look back and say, how dare those people allow slavery to happen for so long? How dare those people? But who was it? It was Christians. They were, by a large part, it was Christians in the North who did what? They recognized that slaves were human beings. They were made in the image of God, and they should not be slaves. And that is the same exact thing with abortion. We have to see the unborn just as human beings who are innocent, who don't deserve what is happening to them. We can love the mothers, which is what Cassie and everybody else who volunteers at this wonderful organization do. Yeah, so I'm going to let Cassie talk now. Sorry I go on for a long time, but I really appreciate what Cassie does, and Doug and Tammy. I so appreciate you guys and everybody else. I just encourage you to come and join us. So thank you, guys. And this is Cassie Walden.
Good evening. I like to move around a little bit more. So, like he said, my name is Cassie Walden. I'm the director of Clarity Women's Care. A little bit about myself. I am Army veteran, wife of 19 years next month, mother of 5 children. I've got a stepdaughter, a nephew that I take care of, and 3 boys. So, a very boy-driven house, but all my boys are in high school or out of the house. I've been with Clarity for 12 years, and I've been director for almost 7 years. And I believe that God has allowed my life experiences to shape me for this position and to have compassion for the women we minister to. I think about the pro-life stance and how it has come up within me. And I remember in high school English class, we had to learn to publicly speak and or write a speech. And even in high school, I wrote that abortion is wrong. And funny enough, my mom found it in the cedar chest. And the education that I have now and how we more effectively reach women, I was like, ooh, high school me was kind of judgy. But, that's how we build and that's how we grow. But I think about my life experiences, and I was in the Army and I was in Germany. And I found myself in a bathroom at the store taking a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And it was just me in that bathroom stall. And I was alone and in Germany and had no family there, but not even for 1 second. And this isn't me, this is God in me. Even at a time where I was rejecting God, He was still within me, leading me. Not for 1 second did I think, oh, I have to get rid of this. I thought, oh, I'm a mom now. Okay, I've got to figure this out. I did end up leaving the Army active. I had 1 year left, so I just transferred to the reserves, and I finished out that, and then moved to this area, went to college. I had my son. He's 21 now and actually in the Army himself. But I think of that moment, how scared I was sitting in that bathroom stall, so alone and so terrified. And I see those women every single day, and I see that they have piles and heaps of shame, and they have piles and heaps of regret and people's opinions and people's expectations on them, or maybe even just the burden of their 4 other children. There's so many different experiences that these women come to us with that I can't even imagine how they are getting up, how they are feeding their children. I mean, the stories that we hear break your heart. And I consider myself a compassionate person, but it still shocks me all the time whenever I hear negativity against, I feel like they're my women. I call them my women, but that's kind of not a right mindset, but I love them. And I have such a heart for them because God had such a heart for me. And where she is now is not where she has to stay. Where I was in Germany in that bathroom and the decisions I was making, that's not where God left me. That's where he pulled me out of. And that's what we have the opportunity to do with these women. Not every woman is open to talking about God or talking about spiritual matters or wanting a relationship with us. Sometimes they just want that pregnancy test and an answer. Sometimes they just need their diapers and they're out of there. That's okay. I'll still love you there. And then sometimes we have the women who need a friend. They need a relationship. And that is when we thrive there, because there's so many of our staff and volunteers that's why we're there. We want to pour into these women like God poured into us. And so God has plans for her and her child, just like he did for me. And I never in a million years thought I would leave the Army and end up being a pregnancy center director. I thought I was going to be in law enforcement. And it's just such a different place that God has for us that we could never plan. And we can help her understand God's love, but we have to meet her where she is. And so over the past about year and a half, we've been looking at our approach and how pregnancy centers meet women and how they can be more effective. And last year, it was last year, right? Yeah, last year, we took about a week and we went to another state, Omaha. We went to Omaha. Who's ever been to Omaha? But we studied under Spera Vita, and they have spent the time and the money, and they found a process that is more effective in reaching abortion-minded women, and it has knocked my socks off. It has given us such a freedom to follow this process, and I hate this word, but a script, because I thought, ooh, a script. How can God work with a script? And it's amazing. So now, over the past 6 months, we've been working this new procedures and this new script, and we have seen the number of lives saved just continue to grow each month. Last year, we had 26 changed minds for life. There was 2 sets of twins in there. It was amazing. And this year already, we've had 7 lives saved. And so God is definitely working, and we are definitely growing and thinking how to be more effective with what we have. About Clarity Women's Care, we were founded in 1980, and we're overseen by a board of directors. We are volunteer-based, and we currently have 3 employees. Myself, Samantha, she is our assistant director. She runs the Marion office, and a few of you have met her. And we have Jenny Landon. She's our sonographer, and she's able to provide ultrasounds 3 days a week for us, and that is the key to getting these women in. And we're doing ultrasounds earlier than we ever thought we would, but getting them answers that first day. And then if it's a little too early for us to maybe see a heartbeat or something like that, we might invite them back the next week. And we have our certain steps on how to do that, but it is really showing us that providing these women answers to their medical questions in their time of medical need, because for them, this is a medical decision. So moving forward into a more medical-based procedures is the key to moving forward to being more effective. And so our services, free and confidential pregnancy tests, limited ultrasounds, and assistance with baby items. One thing that some pregnancy centers around the country are stepping away from while they move towards the medical services is dropping the material services, the diapers and the clothing. But we're not in a big enough area to where there is another place that is big enough and constant enough to be able to provide those services, so we keep them. We think it's important to provide not only support during that medical decision, but also to be able to continue to wrap our arms around them for that continued care, because we love you from the beginning, and as far as, we'll love you further, but until your baby's out of diapers. And so I think it's so important that we also have a name in the community as that we don't just care about the baby. We care about you, we care about your family, your children, and you. And so I think that's important to be able to provide that, no, we're not just about that pregnancy test. We want to help support you and help you grow through parenting. So we do have plans for growth. In October, we purchased, for the Carbondale office, there was an old house next door, and we decided to buy that house and knock it down. We have a nice clean slate, and we have plans for growth. We are probably gonna add on another building and connect it, so I guess just an addition. Then we'll have more room for parking. Sometimes on ultrasound days, it can get pretty tight in there, and so it'll be really nice to not be just so crowded. But also in the Carbondale office is where we provide all of our medical appointments now. It's not the biggest building, and so sometimes I have a couple women that are sitting there, they're waiting for their ultrasounds, and they're scared. This is the worst day of their lives to them. You know, they don't know if they're pregnant, or they just found out, and they've got to get that ultrasound to see how far along they are. And then a mom comes in with her kids, and they're screaming, and they're throwing stuff, and the other mom looks stressed out, and she's thinking, wow, I can't be that. Nope, I can't do that. And so having them in the same waiting room can be a detriment to our women considering abortion. And so we are going to separate the two entrances, and that will be very effective in providing the abortive-minded woman a safe, secure, professional environment as she considers her options. And it's just very calming and peaceful for her. And it'll feel like more of a medical appointment than, oh, I'm at this free clinic type place. And so it just increases the level of professionalism and comfort for her. So in 2023, we served 1,457 individuals. That included 776 children from 681 families, most of them moms, but we do serve some dads, and I think that's great. We had 2,010 visits, and that included the pregnancy tests, the ultrasounds, and then the material services such as diapers, clothing, formula, car seats, pack and plays, things like that. We served 81 cities. Does Southern Illinois even have 81 cities? Nope, it doesn't, because only 45 of those were within Southern Illinois. The other, however many cities, because I'm not good at math, were outside of Illinois, and a lot of those were coming for the ultrasounds from these other states that Tony was talking about. But 14 Southern Illinois counties, and now we've served women with our medical services from Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Indiana. We had a 22% increase in clients and a 37% increase in visits. And basically 3, maybe 4 of us are doing all this in 2 offices. And so we're learning how to be a more well-oiled machine and how to be more effective. And I'm looking forward to adding on this new building so we can continue to increase our services in an effective and efficient way. Our medical services last year, we had 189 pregnancy tests. 75 of them were at risk for abortion and positive. That means that they are considering abortion as an option, or they're not quite sure, or they actually said, yeah, no matter what, this is what I'm doing. So even if they are just asking about it when they come in for the first time. We did 148 ultrasounds, and 86 of those were at risk. And this was a 57% increase from last year, and I know that that has to do with the other states coming in. Out of those 86% or 86 at-risk scans, we had 26 changed minds. That's 35% of our at-risk pregnant patients chose life. So a few years ago, we didn't even have the procedures in place and the correct documentations and all of our hard work. Like, we just didn't know how many lives we saved because we were just kind of busy hugging all the moms and handing out diapers and loving on them, and we weren't really tracking very well. And so through this education and over the past few years, we've worked on tracking well, and so we've been able to see. And so the first 6 months that I started tracking, I think we had like 3 lives saved, and I was like, okay, that's a pretty low starting point, but we can only go up from there. And so last year with 26, and it just keeps going up. And already this year we were at 7. And so it makes me know in my heart that everything we're moving towards, God has us reaching for a goal. And it's just going to continue to improve. So our material services are provided from churches and women's groups and other community agencies and a few organizations that we receive grants from. But the majority of it is just community donations. So last year we received an estimate of $48,000 worth of material items, diapers, clothing, formula, things like that. We distributed nearly 1,900 donations of diapers, which is like 57,000 diapers. And over 400 cans of formula, nearly 600 baby bottles, and over 6,000 baby outfits. Whenever moms come in, we try to give them about a week's worth of clothes just because we have to try to meet everyone's needs. A lot of the clothes that we run out of near the end of the season, but that's why, I don't know if you're on our Facebook, you might see us needing, oh my gosh, we need 24-month boy again. We are always going through 24-month boy. Something about those boys, they just ruin all the clothes. But and then another one of the material services we provide are car seats and pack and plays. And so pack and plays we're using as portable cribs now. We used to provide like the full-size cribs, but a lot of moms don't have room for them. They've got small apartments or they're living with family and they just didn't have room for them. And let's face it, they're getting more expensive. And so pack and plays are a perfectly safe place for babies to sleep alone on their backs. And that's everything that we're pushing education on the women for how to keep their babies safe at sleep and reduce the risk of SIDS. And so we provide car seats, portable cribs, and education on how to use those properly. Myself and Samantha are both certified on car seat safety installation, and that was a 4-day class. Who knew that it takes 4 days to learn to install car seats? But I promise you, if you've tried to install car seats, you know it's tough. And so I help families every week install their car seats, and I think that's when I'm most appreciated because it can be very rough. But that's the equipment that we buy with grant money. So like Ameren, the Pashard Foundation, and other agencies, we buy those new, and we're able to provide families with that. Items that we run out of the most are 12, 18, and 24-month clothing, size 5 and 6 diapers and pull-ups, and of course the disposables such as wipes, baby wash, lotion. And who remembers when you had babies, those little bitty baby socks? They disappear. So baby socks, always looking for more of those. There are many ways to be involved, and like the one that's coming up. We have our Walk for Life coming up on Saturday, May 4th. It's at the Carterville Community Center in Cannon Park, and it is our 3rd year outside, I believe, and it's a lot of fun. Let's see, this year the theme is Life is Sweet, so it's going to be candy themed. There'll be pretty little candy pictures everywhere. But it's just a really good time to get to celebrate with other like-minded people and to be able to just appreciate what God has done for us to be able to help these women. It is our annual fundraiser, and we are trying to raise $40,000. We try that each year. I think last year, we were at 42. So it's a fun event. There's information on our website, and all the churches receive packets that will have the information, but you can go to claritywomenscare.org/walk and get signed up. You get either paper, if you like to do it the old-fashioned way, a paper registration, or you can do it online, and then you can share a link on your Facebook or through text or email with your family and ask them to sponsor you as you walk for life. And the more you ask your family and friends, the more we can raise together, and that's the way that it's done best. So there's volunteering weekly at either office. Unfortunately, we're only open Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, so if you work during the week, it's not always a good fit for you. But we also have another way to be involved is through our prayer text, and they are anonymous prayer requests. I don't have my phone on me, but when we send them out, it's through a program, so you're not going to be getting responses from everyone. You know, those group texts, they drive you nuts. But it just simply says, please join Clarity Women's Care in prayer for a woman who's considering abortion. Or if there's a saved life, it's please join Clarity in praise for a woman who's chosen life. So they're short, they're sweet, and there's no replies. And it's just a wonderful way to help support us and the moms with your prayers. The Walk for Life, diaper drive, or other material support, like during the year, maybe Mother's Day is around our walk, so it's not a good time for that. But other times throughout the year, your church could host a baby shower or a diaper drive. And at the event, everyone brings like a case of diapers or something. And that's just an easy way to have a fun event, and it could benefit us. and the families, or donating your family's used children's or maternity clothes. Oh, we need maternity clothes at the Carbondale office. It was went through a lot this winter, and I'm getting ready to pull out my spring and summer, and there's only one tub. So I have some things left in there, but there's a whole lot of different women with different shapes and different clothing styles. So if you're done with your maternity clothes, or you know your daughter or your niece or something, see if they're done with them and they could donate it to us. Or consider monthly support or annual support, and this helps us cover the cost of our limited staff and our ever-increasing items such as insurance and utilities. But either way, I'd say my favorite way is through the prayer text. I signed myself up, and I'm the one hitting the send button, and I still like to get them. And I like it when Tony sends me a smiley face, too, after getting them. So it's just so many ways that you can be involved in helping encourage life and encourage women. So whenever I think about where I was 21 years ago with that pregnancy test in hand, and I think about certain women who have kind of stuck with me through the years. I have a mom, and I'll call her Jenny. That's just the top name I think of. And Jenny came to us, probably 4 or 5 years ago with a different pregnancy. And she was just my standard, first time I met her, she was positive and just, nothing really stood out. Then she came back for diapers one day, and I could tell she had been crying. And it was just a random, very normal day. And it was near the end of the day. And when I think about the times that I have with these women, I think God orchestrates my phone not ringing, other women not coming in, to where I can sit with them on my little couch and offer them a drink or offer them a tea or some candy. This other woman was crying last week. I'm like, do you want some chocolate? She's like, yes, I do. And so just that moment that God orchestrates with their broken hearts, with their stress, and then I can love on them. But so this was years ago, and she was telling me that she was trying to handle working overnight, and she was afraid for her children's safety. And just the heavy burden that it was trying to be a single mom and providing and carrying all that load. I couldn't fix her problems, but I could love her, and I could encourage her, and I could pray with her. So a few years later, she's back, and she has a positive pregnancy test. And she's a believer, and I guess I should never be shocked, but when she said, Cassie, I can't do this, I have to get an abortion. And I think my jaw probably dropped. I'm like, really? You're telling me this? I think I was shocked because she has prayed so boldly so many times for so many things, and I'd never thought, wow, she could lose all. Fear is so heavy. Fear is such a tool of the devil. And so we prayed with her, and I feel like I had a little more boldness with her because I had a relationship with her already. And I remember holding her hands in my office that day and just praying that God would take this fear from her. And I told her, I know you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you made this decision. And I can't tell that to most women because I don't know them, and it would be very rude of me to assume that. And but I felt like with her it was okay, and it was. And that pregnancy was rough for her. There were many times she came back to me just broken and in tears. And that baby is turning 2 in May. And he is, of course, the joy of her life. Her life hasn't gotten easier. Her life hasn't been magically fixed. But even, I'm in awe of her faith. And here I was ministering to her. And there's been times that we talk, and she prays so strongly and so expectantly. And she has taught me a little bit too. And so there's been times when I'll pray with her, and I'm a little more quiet and reserved, but I think we can feed each other and we can teach each other because God is in both of us. And so she's just one of the I don't want to say stories, but she's one of the people that's going to stick with me forever And I think that's because God orchestrates these meetings through organizations such as Clarity and ministries all throughout, everywhere. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, or if they were for Tony's presentation. Yes. It is on Prairie Lane, so on the way to, not Donsall. I'm not in Marion. Yeah, Casey's. What's the cake place? Larry's. Yes. If you're going to Larry's and they have the Casey's on the left and the veterinary office on the right, that's Prairie, West Prairie Street. Yeah, it used to be the Hands of Hope Clinic, medical clinic, yeah. Yes. So you can give me your number and I'll sign you up, or you can go to lifeprayerpartner.com/CWC, so Clarity Women's Care, or just tell me and I'll write your number down and sign you up tomorrow when I get to work. Yes. Oh, yes. So we pump lots of money into Google Ads. Gosh, even like 3 or 4 years ago, we never paid for advertising, and it is now a large portion of our budget. It's effective. I mean, it just blows me away that we have to give them so much money, but it works. And the way it works is like you have a budget set, and once you spend that, it stops running your ad. And when my money is out for that month, I can see that the calls, they almost stop. Yeah, so Google Ads online, I mean, we have totally had to reassess the way that women are finding us. Word of mouth and Google. Yes. There is always a need for adoptive families. I'm noticing that more women, while they haven't initially wanted to choose adoption, maybe they couldn't get that abortion in time. I mean, I'm just being real with their situation, and they don't want to go through the next procedure because, they say, if I can't do the pill, then I'm not going to do it. So I'm finding that women who we are talking to about adoption, either it wasn't their first choice and they're just still so stuck in their life's hard situations. I was talking with the local adoption worker last week, and we have currently 3 of our clients talking to local adoption agencies. And what shocks me is I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've only seen 2 in 12 years even talk to the adoption agency, and now I've got 3 in like 2 months. So I think it's going to become a little bit more common.
Research I did too for the adoption thing, there's generally just under 100,000 abortions, or just under 1 million abortions in Europe, U.S., and there are typically between 100, get this straight, typically between 1 million and 2 million people waiting for an adoption. So, like me, I'm sure a lot of you probably know people that tried to adopt and never got the call. That's a very common thing that everybody in the community got called over. A lot of adoption services have kind of dried up because there's just not that the availability. You see some of these people go overseas to adopt because they can't adopt American children.
One thing we're working to educate the women on is adoption is not like foster care. I have so many moms that when I bring up adoption, a lot of them have come from foster care, and they're like, oh no, I came from foster care, there's no way. And I'm like, oh, well, you would actually get to choose the adoptive family. It's not like foster care. And so education, it's going to probably take a generation or 2 to change that mindset. But research has been done by Vitae Foundation, and they saw that women viewed adoption as the worst of 3 evils, they called it, because in their mind, if they have an abortion, it's quick, it's done, it's over with. If they have the baby, it lasts forever, and then they have a death of their dreams, their goals, and things like that. And then with adoption, for some reason, they just see it as the worst. And I think it's because they kind of view it as a foster care. Well, if you guys think of any other questions later, we'd be very happy to show you one of the offices. I know you guys have been a supporter for so long, and we thank you for that. Your ladies' groups bring us baby items, and sometimes I wish you guys could see the moms, whether it's little blankets or cute little outfits. The moms are so appreciative, and they love it so much. So I wish that you guys could see their faces when we've met a need, and they're just so thankful. So we thank you for that.
Well, it's kind of loud. I'm a loud talker. Thank you for sharing with us this evening. I was trying to think about how the information that you gave us was impacting me and affecting me, and I was looking for a word, and the first word I thought about was informative. You informed me, and the second word I thought was reinforced me, my ability to communicate, should I get the opportunity with someone. But then it didn't satisfy me, and I came up with this word out of nowhere. What you gave me was clarity. A God thing, I guess. It just came. But I guess that means that your mission was successful here tonight, because I know all these folks are with you, every one of them. So I'll tell you what, thank you for coming. And let's stand together and have a prayer. Lord, we thank you for the fact that we got to be here together this evening, and we were informed and we were reinforced and we were given more clarity, and we're grateful for that. How important is this? Life and death. So I ask you to bless these folks in their work and bless us as we look for opportunities, which I guess in a way, sadly, but in another way, great, that we will have opportunities to share with someone some of this information that we have and the convictions of our heart and what you would have to say so that you can speak to people through us. And so again, bless this work, this ministry. We ask your blessings upon Second Baptist Church and what we're about. And this is one of the things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.